Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. We appreciate you being here with us tonight. And just hang tight. We'll get started soon.
Well, good evening, everyone. We will go ahead and get started. We'd like to thank everyone for joining us on tonight. I'm Leofric Thomas Jr., the Manager of Data and Policy. And on behalf of the Jacksonville Public Education Fund, we'd like to welcome you to our Advocacy Night, which will be a conversation with members of our Duval Delegation about the legislative processes, along with how we as a community can be engaged. So please actively engage in all that is in store for us on this evening. Before we proceed, we'll tell you a little bit about JPEF. JPEF values the voice of the community, and as a part of our mission to convene stakeholders around important issues in education, we host advocacy nights to both inform and be informed. JPEF is an independent think and do tank with the mission of activating community support, connecting partners, and advancing effective ideas for the success of all students. Our work is grounded in research and best practices. We also actively seek out input from parents, educators, students, and community leaders. Your voice matters, so we're pleased that you're taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here on tonight. We greatly appreciate our elected officials, Representative Dean Black and Representative Angie Nixon, for joining us on this evening. We know that they will bring a lot of insight to the conversation, as well as will each of you attending. You can find out more on JPEF's website and also sign up for our newsletter to receive timely updates. Thank you all for your attendance and your interest in what's best for Duval County students and the community. So with that being said, we are seeking out as we look for valuable resources in our community to help us be more equipped on opportunities within our district. There are many factors that impact the challenges our district faces, and it will take everyone on this Zoom and around and beyond to activate the advocate in themselves to ensure every student in Duval County has access to quality education. So let us begin with our discussion for this evening. Joining us today, we have Representative Dean Black, who represents the 15th House District of the state of Florida, and Representative Angie Nixon, who represents the 13th House District of the state of Florida. To our audience, please utilize the Q&A box in order to submit a question you may have at any point of the conversation, and we will take note of those. At the end We will try to get to questions on this evening. If not, we will ensure that they get answered, and we will do our best to post those answers in a reasonable time frame. We are also live on Facebook. Just search Jacksonville Public Education Fund and you'll find this advocacy night there. To help us ensure as many people in the community can tune in and be informed, we ask that you please log in on Facebook and share this forum with your networks. You invite and encourage you to do so even now. With that being said, let's begin for the evening. At this time, we will give both of our guests an opportunity to share a little bit more about themselves, beginning with Representative Black, and we will follow with Representative Nixon. Representative Black.
Well, good evening, and thank you for hosting this event, and thank you to all who have logged in and are participating. I am an 8th-generation resident of Northeast Florida, and my family have been here a very long time. We came to Florida in 1803. My wife and I have raised 5 children here, and they're all grown now. I went to college at the University of Mississippi, where I got a degree in political science. I'm a small businessman here, and my wife and I also operate a cattle ranch on Jacksonville's north side, out near the Jacksonville National Cemetery. If you've ever been out there and you see the cattle on the sides of the road, those are our cattle, or as I prefer to say, they're God's cattle. He lets me chase after them.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that, Representative Black. And we'll go ahead and Representative Nixon, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. I am Angie Nixon, born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida, in Northwest Jacksonville. I grew up in Florida House District 13, and I'm honored to be representing that district as well right now. I do want to shout out JPEF for pulling this panel discussion together, and I just applaud you all on the work that you're doing. As it relates to public education. And that is one of the reasons that I decided to get involved and become a state rep. So I grew up on the north side. Unfortunately, I had to be bused all the way across town because my mom felt as though we weren't getting the proper resources we needed for me to attend a neighborhood school. My cousin Breon did not do the same and wound up going to a neighborhood school and falling prey to what many call the school to prison pipeline. I lost my cousin to gun violence right after I graduated from college, and I had just had a daughter. He had a son, and I realized that I didn't want my daughter to lose her cousin, her soon to be favorite cousin too, to gun violence. And so they got me started in advocacy. From there, I became a community organizer and really working to try to build power within marginalized communities and making sure that folks have a voice because oftentimes we have elected officials that don't want to listen to their constituents. And that's why I decided to run. I actually unseated an incumbent because folks felt as though folks told us that they didn't have access and they felt as though they couldn't get things done or they weren't even listened to. And so that is why I decided to run for office. I'm going into my 3rd session, got elected for a 3rd time, and I'm super happy to be representing you all.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And I thank you for that. Rep Nixon, you jumped into my notes here. So Rep Black, I'm going to jump to you and my first question off to you will be what inspired you as a Northeast, like say 8th-generation Northeast Florida native, you're a veteran, you own your own business. And so what inspired you to run for office?
So I've always been very interested in politics. That's why I majored in political science. So it's always been more than just a passing interest to me. And I did serve in the military. I come from a military family. In the male line, virtually every one of my ancestors, going back as far as you can find, served in the military in some capacity. So in our family, it was always sort of expected that you would serve your community and serve your country. And once I finished service in the military, well, once a servant, always a servant. Once you've sworn an oath to serve, it sort of gets in your blood, and it was certainly in my DNA because of my family heritage. I had gotten involved in politics in earnest back in 2009. Now, I was a radio talk show host for a number of years, off and on, and that led me to end up running for office back in 2010. Now, by the will of the people, I came in second in a 9-way primary, but I stayed involved in politics after that. And I guess if you were to ask me the single most important reason why I decided to run, look, I never really do anything of importance without praying about it. When I first ran, I prayed about it. I really felt that I was called to run. Now, in point of fact, God didn't tell me I'd win. He just said run. And I had opportunities to run over the years between then and when I was elected to office for my first term in 2020, but I passed because I just didn't hear the calling. But in 2020, I prayed about it and I really heard the calling. And I always felt that public service, that running for office, it should be a real calling. It should not be an ambition. If you're running to be somebody, if you're running for ambition's sake, well, you're the last person in the world that we need, right? But I really felt that the Lord led me to do this work, and I absolutely love it. And so that's why I'm here. I guess what I'm saying is I'm basically on a mission from God. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Representative Black. And I can actually hear that radio voice is there. So I believe that from years ago. But we'll stay with you on this question here. So as the preceding chair of the Duval delegation, please let our audience know more about who is a part of this delegation and its responsibilities to the Duval County and its surrounding communities.
So the members of the Duval delegation are all of the members of the Florida House and the Florida Senate from our county. And the best way to describe its role and its function, you know, the Constitution and the foundation of our republic guarantees our people the right to petition their government, to express your problems, to come up with solutions, to have your say and to be heard. And that is probably the single most important role of the delegation itself. We meet periodically. We just had a delegation meeting last week, and numerous citizens and private citizens, but also representatives of various entities, various charities, also various divisions of local government and municipal governments, and they come and express their needs. Sometimes it's an appropriation that they want for maybe a drug rehab center. Sometimes it's a municipal government and they're seeking money for roads or infrastructure. Sometimes it's a private citizen and they're not happy with a law that exists and they want to express their displeasure, as is their right. Sometimes they have an idea for a law, something they think should be done. And that's where some of our best ideas come from, is from the citizens themselves. And so the best way to describe the delegation is it is the place where all of our citizens, whether Republican, whether Democrat, independent, unregistered, it doesn't matter. Every citizen gets to come there, have their voice, and they have a right to expect that that voice would be listened to.
I appreciate that response, Representative Black, and that actually leads into our next question. You guys are going into my notes here, and I'll pass this over to Representative Nixon. What are certain things you do or processes you take to stay informed on those key issues that people may bring to you in the areas that you serve, and how do you go about those?
Yeah, for sure. So, again, I'm a community organizer as well. And I oftentimes host community meetings, host town hall meetings and forums, as well as I go try to meet people where they are. My staff often, if I'm not able to meet or make it, we go and attend neighborhood association meetings, in addition to some of the CPAC meetings and things like that. I often also, and I just had a conversation with my staff today. Each legislative session, we open it up to allow folks to pitch bills that they want us to hear and want us to potentially run, and to tell us about issues that concern them. And so I really try to listen to the people and not necessarily corporations. Unlike many of my colleagues, there are some bills that have came out, unfortunately, that were pushed really hard by lobbyists and corporate interests. And if you look in the background at the money and how things are going, you can kind of see the way in which Tallahassee is leading. And it is because the money is more at play than the people's voices itself, which is very unfortunate. But I am excited as it relates to the new Speaker of the House. He basically said the same thing that I just said in regards to Tallahassee having not been the people's house for so long, and listening to partisan politics and things like that. And so he made a pledge that he was going to listen to the people and return the people's house to the people. So we're super excited about that, and hopefully that is how the majority of the rest of the legislators will start to move, by listening to the people and not corporations.
Well, I definitely appreciate that response, Representative Nixon. And Rep. Black, I will actually ask that same question to you. What are some processes that you take to stay informed on key issues in the area you serve, and how do you go about those?
Well, so there are a multitude of things that we do to stay abreast of issues. I read a lot, and I'll read online. I'll also read the newspaper, various business publications, and beyond that, I have an open door, and I take meetings regularly. I meet with constituents, and they have a tendency to keep me informed too. Also, through our House communications portals, people send us emails, they send me text messages. I'm very free with my cell phone number. By the way, if you're listening and there's anything I can do for you or my office can help you with, my cell phone number is 904-813-3016. That's 904-813-3016. I believe in being accountable and available to the community, and people reach out to me all the time about all sorts of things. And so by listening to the people, by reading everything that is available to us, I am able to stay abreast on what concerns the community, and then through the legislative process, act upon that.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome, man. And that's very transparent to give out your number like that so people can reach you. We appreciate that. So we'll move forward to some of our legislative things. As some of our audience's members may know, legislative session is coming up, but most may not know what it is and all it entails. So I will pass this to Representative Nixon. Would you mind sharing more about what legislative session is and the importance of it?
Yeah, for sure. So it's really important to know, like, that the key thing for state legislators to do really is to pass a balanced budget here in the state of Florida. Each year we vote on a budget, and it goes to the governor, and like that is like the main priority for us. Also, while we're there, we are supposed to pass legislation to help better our communities and improve the quality of life of residents across the state. That is what's supposed to happen, right? I just want to be, I want to be clear. That is what is supposed to happen. But honestly, like over the past few years, that has not been what's happening, right? And so what we have seen over the past few years is we have seen the rise of corporate interest and elected officials who have been beholden to those corporations, right? Like, and I'll keep it to basically I'll keep it on, I'm sorry, on education, since this is JPEF, right? So what we've seen as it relates to children and education, things like the rolling back of child labor protections, as well as protections for children and in construction, in areas of construction. I'll never forget that this HB 49, which was the rollback of child labor protections, when we asked, they wanted to basically allow 16 and 17-year-olds to work overnight, unlimited hours. And we had concerns and asked them about like the students and the kids, like what about them going to school and all the things. And the sponsor of that bill stated that those aren't children, that they're youth workers, right? And so oftentimes what is happening in Tallahassee is things are getting rammed through because there's a certain agenda. And again, like the agenda has been around corporations who are padding many elected officials' campaign coffers, unfortunately. And so why it's really important for the people to come out even more, right? And like raise their voices and let people know what it is that they want to see come out of Tallahassee. And so that's kind of what's been happening over in Tallahassee. Sometimes we get some good bills that come out, but really over the past few years, we've seen things, some rollback of people's rights. We've seen an attack on freedoms. We've also seen, basically, I will just be blunt to say, the attack on public education. I I see that there is a concerted effort to basically end public education. And what we see is the rising and the proliferation of charter schools. And now we have these corporate schools, these private corporate schools that are now able to take public dollars, right? And don't get me wrong, I believe in choice, right? But I also don't feel that we should be subsidizing millionaires and billionaires' children's education. And oftentimes, the choice, these choice schools, particularly these private schools, they don't operate the same way that public education, that public schools operate, right? They are basically allowed to discriminate. We've seen that nationally where they are telling children that look like me, oftentimes, that they can't wear their hair in certain ways, right? Oftentimes, if you look at the data points, many Black and brown children are kicked out of these schools, right? So basically, they're able to be discriminated against. And so we constantly see that the money is being funneled to these private schools or these charter schools, and they oftentimes return our children back 1 and 2 grade levels behind. And so it has not been savory, all the things that have been happening in Tallahassee, but the people have to come together, right? Oftentimes there are some good bills that come out when they're coming together, and we're able to work in a bipartisan fashion to push things that people want. So I'll leave it at that. I'm interested in hearing what Representative Black has to say about that.
So we, and I just want to address our audience right now. We see your questions coming in, and we want to let you know we see those, and we want to make sure we ask the question that deals with the processes of legislative session. So we do see how some people are addressing certain issues. We're sticking to the processes of legislative session and the Duval delegation. So I see your questions, and we may try our best to get those at a later date, but please keep the questions to the processes. So as we move on into our question for this evening, our next question for this evening, Representative Black, I'll also give you an opportunity to answer that question about what legislative session is and all it entails for audience members who may not know.
Well, my esteemed colleague, Representative Nixon, has her particular viewpoint on what we've accomplished in the past few years in Tallahassee. I have a very different viewpoint. I'm actually proud of what we've done in the Florida legislature. I think we have made tremendous accomplishments, and we don't have the time in this short allotment of a few minutes really to go over all of that. But just to pick a couple of high points, I'll pick up where my colleague left off on public education. Look, we have empowered parents to be able to choose where their children go to school and what type of school they wish to attend. And we have given that right to them through the passage of HB 1. Now, if you want to go to the traditional government-run public school, you are free to do that. You're also free to go to a charter school, and you can go to a private school of your choosing. That type of freedom empowers parents to make the right choices for their children. We're not ashamed of that. We haven't tried to destroy public education. Charter schools, private schools, traditional public schools, those now are public education. And what we have done is we have opened it up so that parents can make those decisions. And everything that I read and the people that I talk to show that that is wildly popular among the citizens of Florida. We've done a lot of other things too. We passed major tort reform because there were abuses of lawsuits in Florida, and it was driving insurers out of the state of Florida. And that was driving people's insurance through the roof. It was becoming completely unaffordable. We've done a lot of things to address that. We still have work to do. One of the things that we did is we passed a bill where you can actually harden your home and help it to withstand the severe storms and hurricanes that we get here, and get matching public funds to help you do that. And if you do that, you can get reductions in the cost of your insurance. So we have done so many wonderful things in the last few years. And I do also want to address the conversation about corporate interests and lobbyists and so on. Look, here's what I've learned. If there's any major issue of great importance, there will be a group on either side of it. Some want it, some don't. Oftentimes, these people will contribute both sides to your campaign or whatever. And I've learned this. You have to get very comfortable with accepting a check and then voting against somebody the very next day. I don't really worry about protecting my seat in the legislature. I go up there to do the right thing every single day. And I always feel like if I do the right thing, well, the people will reelect me. Well, and if they don't, then I'll get my life back. But either way, I find it refreshing to be in the legislature, because I find that there are a lot of good intentioned people with a lot of integrity, listening to the people and acting on the advice and counsel that they get from the citizens. And that's why we're passing these laws. And the people just voted in the election we just have. And they not only returned a supermajority Republican legislature who have been setting this agenda largely, but they even expanded it. So the people have spoken, and they like what we're doing, and they should, because your legislature is working hard and they're doing a good job for average citizens.
Well, Representative Black, I will appreciate you for your answer and response to that. Moving on to the next question, we see that there's a process, and you mentioned this before, when it comes to bills and things that come about. So when does the process actually begin for legislators when it comes to submitting a bill or deciding to even co-sponsor a bill? And what is the process for a bill once it is filed? Where does that bill go after that?
So is this coming to me?
Yes, sorry about that, Representative Black.
Okay, no, I think you said it. I just wanted to be sure. Well, the process begins actually right now through forums just like this. If you're listening or watching, if you have a good idea, I want you to reach out to me. If you have a good idea, if there's something that you think should be done, or something you think is horrible that we should stop doing, I want you to reach out to my office with that idea. And once a good idea is found, and it may come from a variety of sources, then the process begins. I may sit down with my local staff. I have a legislative office in Nassau County and also Duval County, so that it's convenient to everyone in the area. And then we may sit down and we may discuss that. Beyond that, we may decide that we're going to sit down with policy analysts at the Capitol, and we will seek wise advice and counsel. I'll also talk to interested groups from back home here in Duval County. If it's an education bill, Mr. Thomas, I might call you. I will meet with members of the school board and anyone who is interested, in anyone that I think has wisdom and knowledge about a particular topic. If we continue to think that this is something we should act on, well, then we begin drafting a bill. And once that bill is drafted with, again, lots of advice, lots of input, and lots of counsel, the bill is filed. Once it's filed, it will then be assigned to subcommittees. Each of these subcommittees has particular areas of expertise, and the chairman of that committee will either schedule it for a hearing, or he may decide that it's not something that they want to act on, in which case what you would need to do is you would want the citizens to be talking to that subcommittee chairman, as in that case would I be, and we would encourage them to calendar it and put it on the calendar. And citizens can actually come to Tallahassee and can attend those subcommittee hearings. And you can advocate for a position or against a position. And you can do that at each step through the subcommittees. Now, once it's made it through all of its subcommittees, if at any point it's voted down, though, it's dead. But if it makes it through all of its subcommittees, then it will come to the floor of the House. Once it comes to the floor, it will be debated and voted upon. And if it is voted upon and passes on the House floor, then it has to be acted on as well in the Senate. Now, if it passes both the House and the Senate, then it's going to go to the governor for his signature or sometimes his veto. And that's how that process works. But the process begins right now through these conversations that we're having with each other today.
Awesome. That was a great explanation, Rep. Black. And we're going to send this next question to Representative Nixon. From your, like I said, you've been 3 terms in now or going into your 3rd term. When does a legislator know that an issue is important enough to be addressed through legislation? And how does one work to get support for that legislation?
Right. So how it should work is they should be talking to members of the community, talking to small business owners, figuring out like what's an issue, or looking at emails that they're getting, and if people are sending emails requesting meetings, or even just sending emails about a certain issue, they can, be like, oh my gosh, that's something I need to address, right? Also like going out in the community, walking around, checking neighborhoods. Also like Representative Black stated, reading a lot, the newspaper, or watching the news to see any issues or concerns, going to the schools, talking to teachers, educators, and parents and students as well. And then that's, other cities or other states to see how they may have addressed similar issues. And then, getting with that silo, say it is commerce or say it is early childhood education, potentially getting in that silo, reading the bills and seeing if there's anything that needs to change around that. And then working with the leadership to try to get that bill in a form where it could be so that it can be drafted, and then so that they could potentially agenda it, right? Like that is the idea. That is the way it should work. And then they can go through the process that Representative Black just explained, right? But unfortunately, the reality of it is the folks that are in leadership in Tallahassee, members of my colleague who's on the phone party, in which he also the GOP, the Republican Party, what we're seeing is they are utilizing bills that have been put forth by very conservative think tanks that are like the Heritage Foundation, who are also, pushing things like Project 2025. I want to be clear about that. They are basically doing some of these really detrimental bills, and they're testing them out here, right? They are basically, if you look, it's the same playbook that has been going on in like Texas, in Louisiana, and in Georgia, and they're basically like doing the same bills. And what we've seen though is like similarly with HB1 that was actually done, I believe, in Iowa, as well as Arizona. Representative Black talked about HB1, which basically opened up public funding to corporate private schools, right? We saw what they did over there. Myself, my colleagues on the back rows, we talked about it. We argued and debated on the floor about it. And we said that basically we were going to see a lot of money leaving our public school system, and it was going to cause harm to our schools. And that's exactly what's happening in Duval County now. We're having to close down schools because of HB1. And so that is going to be detrimental to our communities, right? And, my colleague also talked about, corporations and accepting money and things like that. I want to be clear, right? When he talked about insurance, right? And how they had tort reform, that so-called tort reform has led to us having one of, if not the highest property insurance rate and the highest car insurance rates in the country. Not only that, but these insurance companies still left our state. Farmers doesn't operate here in the state of Florida. So I want to be clear, right? And so that's what happens when you allow, with the leadership that we have right now, unfortunately, in the state, that is not what we should want to happen. Again, we want to get back to the people and start listening to the people instead of corporations. And maybe we wouldn't be harming people the way we are over in Florida.
So with that, is that well, I guess like Representative Black said, you have an opportunity to write legislation that goes against something.
Yes. And also it's really important to note, like, we also have the opportunity to make bills less bad, right? And so oftentimes we have, like, you all, many folks came over, right? Like, many constituents and residents came over when we're putting out the call for like bad bills and trying to make them less bad, to come and have conversations and to speak out at committee meetings and that type of stuff. When many in leadership see that something is unpopular, that's when they try to change course, right? So, like, let's be clear, there was a bill that was coming out that would have allowed 16 to 17-year-olds to be able to work on roofs and scaffolding. I don't know about y'all. I have a 17-year-old. She can barely wash the dishes correctly, right? And so if you imagine what have happened if we allow 16 and 17-year-olds to work on roofs and scaffolding, we were able to make that bill less bad by working behind the scenes, talking with Senator Simon and things like that. And also activating organizations like, similar to y'all's, maybe not y'all's, but organizations, and as well as residents, highlighting to them what would happen and asking them to come over to work on that bill and to, like, speak out against that bill, right? And so at the end of the day, like, we have to know if it's popular or not. Like, they need to see whether a bill is popular, but we have to, like, come out and have our voices heard. And what's happening in Tallahassee too often is the corporations have the ear of elected officials more so, right? Because they can pay people to be in the faces of elected officials each and every day. And so it's going to be incumbent upon us as residents, right, to ask for meetings year round with our elected officials, right? And they help that from those meetings and building relationships, they are going to feel accountable to us, right? Making sure that they're coming out to our community meetings, making sure that they're having their own community meetings, and that they're inviting people and keeping us informed. Too often in Tallahassee, things go under the radar. And so they don't want to necessarily have a light shined over there. And so it's really important for you all to continue to spread the word about what's going on so that we can get legislation that is from the people and for the people instead of corporations.
Well, I do definitely I appreciate Representative Black, you and Representative Nixon for giving us that information about how things can work in Tallahassee and how these bills can be heard and how things can be addressed. But now we're running kind of short on time, so we want to kind of move ahead along in this. And
Excuse me, Mr. Thomas.
sure.
Representative Nixon addressed me by name in her comments, and I'd like to respond. I'll try to keep it brief. May I?
We want to keep it about processes. So I don't want to waste our attendees' time, and we don't want to be the
Well, it is about the process.
Okay.
So the idea that your legislature is not listening to the people is wrong. We are listening. The second hardest thing in all of politics is to get a supermajority of anything. But the hardest thing in all of politics is to keep it. Because normally when you get a supermajority, it means that you have won some seats, some districts that really are tough, and ordinarily the other side comes and takes those back. Well, the people of Florida have spoken about the governance that we are giving to the citizens of Florida. They elected a supermajority, and not only did they re-elect it, they expanded it. And it is proof that the process that we're using here is helping Floridians. And as for House Bill 1, House Bill 1 is not harming public education. It is helping public education. The idea that it is harming traditional public schools you should find that insulting, because what it says is that if parents had a choice, they wouldn't come to your school. And that's not true. We have a lot of great traditional public schools. Many of you listening may work there and you know they're good schools, and there are lots of parents choosing to bring their children there. All we have done is open up choice to parents, and that is extremely popular, and they have voted their conscience on that recently.
Well, I think one thing we can see from this here is that our representatives are ready for legislative session. So they are fired up and they are ready to go. So we're gonna move on to the next question. This is going to get into community engagement. We're going to wrap up with these next three questions. 2 or 3 questions, I'm sorry. So Representative Black, after hearing this information from you and Representative Nixon, what are ways that the community can make their voices heard leading? I know you mentioned it already, but what are some ways that you maybe have experienced or seen that the community can do to make their voices heard leading up to legislative session?
I've said it before, but I will say it again. If you have a good idea, if you think something is good or bad, if you want to make your voice heard to me, my cell phone number is 904-813-3016. Please call me. You can also make an appointment to come into my office. We will sit with you. We will talk with you. We will listen to you. You can also come to see me in Tallahassee. We can make an appointment for you to visit me at the office there. If you're interested in possibly getting a gallery pass and coming and watching the legislative session, let me know about that too. And we're also often looking for people whose children may be interested in serving as pages or messengers in the legislature. And that can be a fantastic experience for kids. If you're interested in that, reach out to my office. Come to Tallahassee during the subcommittee meetings. Make your voices heard there. Come when we're in general session. And then beyond that, talk to other members of the legislature in the Florida delegation, but also elsewhere in the state. You can find us online if you go to myfloridahouse.gov, and there's a plethora of information there to facilitate that for you.
Awesome. And I'm going to ask the same question of Representative Nixon. We're going to keep the answers short so we can get into some of the audience Q&A. So like I said, we got 2 more questions. So Representative Nixon, I'm going to pass the same question off to you.
No, I would agree with Representative Black in regards to ways in which folks can get plugged in and to, help try to move policy in Tallahassee. So we can move on.
Okay, and this is going to be our last question before our audience Q&A, and this is pretty easy going question. So I'm going to give this one to Representative Nixon first, and then we'll end with Representative Black. How much joy do you find in serving your community as an elected official, and what are some things you're looking to accomplish in the upcoming year?
Oh my gosh, I have so much joy in serving my constituents. I often tell people what happens in Tallahassee isn't necessarily real, right? Because like being in Tallahassee is what I should say. It is it's tough when you're in Tallahassee because oftentimes we are trying to fight for folks who not only don't like me personally but don't want my communities to exist, right? But when I come home and you get to see folks and they tell you how they appreciate your voice, they appreciate you trying to get the things that they deserve, because too often they aren't being heard, which is one of the reasons that we started doing things like citizen-led referendums, because things weren't getting done in Tallahassee. And I love helping people at the end of the day. Like that is why I got in office, and that is the only group of people that I am beholden to are like real people, and not corporations and corporate interests. And so I am excited to be a state representative. I'm excited that people can see themselves in me. And yeah, I'm just honored and it's a privilege to be representing constituents in House District 13, but all over the state of Florida.
Well, thank you for that, Representative Nixon. And next, we have Representative Black.
So nothing has brought me greater joy other than the birth of my children and marriage to my wife than serving the people of District 15 and more generally the citizens of Florida. As a business person, I have always known that it's so essential to focus on customer satisfaction. Serving the public, making sure your customers are satisfied is how you make sure your business grows and prospers. And I've carried that into political life, and I am absolutely determined, and my staff will tell you, I'm an absolute freak about making sure that we're serving our constituents, that they are taken care of, that they're listened to, and that their concerns are acted upon. And I absolutely love it. It is the honor of a life. And I want to thank you for sending me there. And I want you again to know that if there's anything I can ever do for you, I will be more than pleased to help you with any problem that you've got in Tallahassee. And all you've got to do is call me. You have my cell phone number.
Well, thank you for that, Representative Black and Representative Nixon. Once again, want to thank you all for being here once again and sharing your insight with us. And we know, once again, we opened up saying that this was about processes. We know some conversation got into some policy and things of that nature. But we want to ensure you that there is opportunity for you to take that from maybe what you've heard or some questions that you have in the Q&A section to the representatives we have here and other representatives in our state. We do have a Q&A question here that I believe maybe both of you can answer from your own respective expertise, but how does one go about obtaining appropriation funds? Should we be setting up meetings now with representatives in Tallahassee? And I will pass that off to whoever may want to answer that.
I'll take it.
Okay.
If you're interested in an appropriations request, you should reach out to my office. It's not too early. There is a time frame for submitting the request, but it's never too early to let me know what your issue is, what your concern is. I might want to study the nature of your request, and we might need some time for that. So from my perspective, there is no wrong time to start talking to me about an appropriations request.
And if Representative Nixon doesn't have one, we have another question that built on top of that is, if they want to know could the appropriation request be explained? And is there any oversight or quality assurance on organizations on what they claim on the funds they request, or just pretty much what is the process for that?
So anyone can file, not anyone can file. So folks could reach out to elected officials for appropriations, right? And it is, they do have to fill out like an affidavit, like a form with some questions and things like that, and get it submitted. What's supposed to happen is like the folks in those silos, the staffers in those silos look to make sure things check out as it relates to what is put and listed on the form. Like that's what's supposed to happen, right? And then also you try to get it on the agenda, not the agenda, but you try to basically, like, it gets voted on basically. The appropriations chair will try to put it in a budget, as well as the appropriations chair on the Senate side and the House side. And so you want to try to get it to match up, right? Like that's what's supposed to happen. And like I am open to, and Senator Davis, we're open to like some of the smaller organizations trying to come in for appropriations and things like that. But you know, there is sometimes like a veto process, right? Oftentimes a lot of money got vetoed this last term. But like folks should reach out to your elected officials to see if you can get some appropriations. Oftentimes, if your mission is in alignment with that state rep, and they see that you're doing good, they'll try to run their appropriations. But just know that a lot of projects do in fact get vetoed by the governor. Sometimes they just don't get funded initially. Oftentimes it takes several years sometimes for things to not get vetoed, and so that's what can happen. But it's important for them to start building relationships. So like Representative Black stated, like, meet with him, meet with us, give us the information, and we'll see what we can do about it.
I can add a little to that if you'd like, Mr. Thomas, or we can move on. Up to you.
Go ahead.
So the appropriations process, the nature of the question was, how do you check it out? How do you make sure it's on the up and up? What sort of vetting, if you will, is done? And that begins when you come to my office. You can come to my office. There is an appropriations form that you fill out. But before we do that, we're going to have a conversation, and you're going to explain to me what you would like an appropriation for, and you're going to explain your purposes. I'm going to sit down with you, and I'm going to ask you questions about that. And I'm going to satisfy myself that it's a legitimate use of taxpayer dollars and that there are reasonable controls insofar as I can see in that brief meeting for me to decide that I'm going to help you carry that request. And then as Representative Nixon said, the appropriation staff, they will dig into it even further. When it's something that I really believe in, I am going to work that really hard. I go and I talk to the appropriations subcommittee chairs. I talk to my other members, and I let them know that something is really important to me in my district. And although some things do get vetoed, I find that if you have a good idea, and if it really ought to be done, and it's the right thing to do, and you have a fierce advocate for it, and look, I am a fierce advocate for what I believe in, I can carry that to those subcommittee chairs. I will talk to the governor's staff. I'll do everything I can to help if it's something that I believe in. And look, I've brought I don't even know how many millions and millions of dollars in appropriations back to District 15 and Northeast Florida generally. So I guess it all begins with, if you think you deserve an appropriation, come talk to me and convince me. I will ask you questions, be prepared to answer them, and convince me that what you have is a good use of taxpayer dollars and it's the right thing to do. And I'll look forward to being your advocate, and I'll go to battle for you.
Representative Black to Representative Nixon, I appreciate you all for explaining that. So we've heard about calling and coming to Tallahassee and sitting through subcommittees, but some people are old-fashioned. Emails and writing letters is sometimes how some people work. Is that still something that people can do that will get notified and noticed by their representatives if they do that, to your offices or in other ways leading up to the legislative session?
You want me to
Yes.
start? Ladies first.
Yes, I would say for me, yes. For some of us, yes. But I think it's really great for folks to build relationships with their elected officials, or try to build relationships with their elected officials. And but you should, yes, definitely send emails, definitely make phone calls, definitely mail letters. That is great. But if you're able to schedule in-district meetings with folks and meet with them year-round, attend their meetings occasionally if you can, if you have the means to head to Tallahassee and speak at committee meetings, that is great. That is great as well. And that is the process answer. We can have an offline conversation about like what really happens though.
So I'll add to that, if I may, Mr. Thomas.
Floor is yours.
So let's talk about what really happens. Look, if you take the time to compose a thoughtful email to me and you send it to me, I am going to be informed of that. It's probably going to be put right in front of me and I'm going to read it. Now, sometimes you have organizations that will send out blanket form emails. There was a bill last year, I remember I got 1,800 emails, but they were all carbon copies of the same thing. Obviously, I don't look at all 1,800 of them. I read it once, and then I get some idea of the number of them. But beyond that, I care about emails that come from other parts of the state, but I care most about what comes from my constituents in my district, particularly, and in Northeast Florida generally. So what I would tell you is if you really want to be heard through emails, or letters. Now look, if you send an actual letter, again, not a Xerox copy of something that somebody gave you, but if you really take the time to compose a letter or compose an email and send it to me, that actually has a lot of impact. And if there are a group of people doing the same thing, that's incredibly powerful. I mean, that's going to make me come up out of my chair and take notice. And I think it would for any of my colleagues too. It really does work. It really matters.
Awesome. Well, that's great to know that does work for you all. And so we'll end our questions with this from I think we want to hear from both of you all on this one. What is the most unique way someone has reached out to you to get your attention to speak about an issue?
Most unique.
I don't know.
I don't either. I don't either.
So what we're saying is everything has been done under the sun, huh?
Oh, I've got one. So I was at church, and after the sermon was over, somebody walked up to me in the church and they had an envelope. They had an envelope in their hand, and they walked up to me and they said, "Dean, I need your help. You need to look at this." It was their homeowner's insurance bill. And they said, "I cannot afford this. Can you please look into it?" And of course we did. And that was the session in which we passed tort reform, which helped to reduce the number of abusive lawsuits against insurance companies. Because at that point, we learned that 3/4 of all the lawsuits in the entire country against insurance companies were being filed just in the state of Florida. So it was at church. They came to church with their insurance bill, knowing they would see me there.
That's a good one. At least they know they're going to find you in church.
Yes, sir.
They know it. And Rep Nixon, you haven't thought of one yet, huh?
I mean, people stop me wherever I go, so it's nothing outlandish about it.
Well, one thing about it, we appreciate you both for being here on this evening. We also thank the audience for joining with us on today. Once again, we see your questions in the Q&A box, and most of those are due to or related to certain issues or policies. We will get those to our representatives to see if they would like to respond back to those. Unfortunately, this was not the vessel to answer those on tonight, but we will do our part to make sure that we send those questions out to see if those can be answered and relayed out to you. We do want you to take the opportunity to take a survey for us on this evening, and that survey will be posted in the chat. Please take about 5 minutes to fill that survey out. Give us your thoughts on that so we can take that back and see how we can do better, see how we can progress doing forums or advocacy nights such as this. And we also want you to take that time to sign up for our newsletter and our advocacy blast so that you will know the next time that we're doing things such as this. And we also want to inform you of some important dates coming up for legislative session, and we will post that in the chat as well. But we will want you to know that that as Representative Black mentioned, that things are happening now and going into January. He can correct me or Representative Nixon can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in January subcommittees begin to meet. And in March, legislative session happens for 60 days, and it ends in April. So please be sure to make sure you stay connected with your representatives. You can also go to jaxpef.org for more information under our Advocacy Center tab. And if there's any other questions or or things you may need of JPEF, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Give us a call, email, or reach out to us through our newsletter. And once again, we want to thank Representative Dean Black for joining us on tonight and Representative Nixon. We hope everyone enjoys the rest of their evening and have a great night.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you.